Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we don't just summarize documents, we really pull out the core knowledge you need to be strategically ahead. Today, we're on a pretty critical mission, drilling down into the guidance that's shaping corporate cybersecurity governance for 2025 and into 2026.
And this is the high-stakes conversation that's happening in boardrooms right now. We've synthesized material from groups like the Australian Signals Directorate, the ASD, and the AICD. This isn't just, best practice. For a lot of organizations, this is the new definition of mandatory governance. Our goal today is to hand you the blueprint, really, for understanding the board's evolving role here.
And we have to start with the threat landscape, because the sources are, they're not subtle about it. The alarm is already sounding. Why so much urgency right now?
Because the entire environment has shifted, fundamentally. We're in what they call a heightened global cyber threat environment, and that's being fueled by geopolitical tensions. The Middle East, Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific. What that means, in real terms, is state-based actors are actively positioning themselves for disruptive attacks.
So they're not just probing, they're setting up for something bigger.
Exactly, especially targeting critical infrastructure and supply chains.
And the financial damage here isn't just a possibility. The paper lays out some pretty catastrophic costs.
It does, and when you look at the figures, it really it sets in. Espionage alone cost the Australian economy $12.5 billion. In the last financial year.
$12.5 billion.
And on top of that, the cost of just general cybercrime for large companies is just accelerating. So the board's fiduciary duty, it's now completely tied to cyber resilience. They are the ultimate custodians. They have to manage these risks to protect the company, the shareholders, and maybe most importantly, customer trust.
Okay, so let's talk strategy. The guidance seems to demand two really big shifts in mindset, not just policy changes, but a whole new philosophy. What's the first one?
The first one, and it's a big one, is forcing boards to ask if they are demanding secure by design and secure by default. This is a move away from that old model of, build it first and then try to bolt on security later.
Like an afterthought.
Exactly. It's a foundational change. Boards have to get assurance that the tech they use internally and the products they ship to customers are built on these principles from day one. It's the only way to build what the ASD calls modern defensible architectures.
And that second philosophical pivot, it feels equally stark. It's rooted in this painful truth about the digital world. Assume compromise.
This is probably the most pragmatic shift, if a bit sobering. You just have to operate on the assumption that an intrusion is going to happen.
So it's not if, it's when.
It's when. And so your focus moves away from building this, impenetrable wall and shifts to defending your internal crown jewels, your most critical assets.
So if the wall is going to have holes, the goal is to build a bank vault inside the building instead.
That's a perfect analogy. The strategy moves from, a myth of 100% prevention to 100% assurance that an intruder can't get to what really matters and that you can spot them the second they're inside.
But before we get into the really deep technical stuff that boards now have to oversee, the guidance has a pretty sharp reminder.
Oh, absolutely. The basics, the advanced strategies mean nothing if the basics are neglected. We're talking multi-factor authentication, keeping public-facing services updated, patching known vulnerabilities. These are non-negotiables.
Okay, so from philosophy to actual capabilities. Section 1 is all about internal hygiene, starting with something that used to feel tactical but is now strategic. Event logging and threat detection. Why is this suddenly a top governance priority?
Because without it, you're running blind. I mean, it's that simple. You can't detect a compromise, you can't contain it, and you definitely can't prove what happened later. Boards need to know with confidence that there is a rigorous, enterprise-wide approach to logging. It's the only way to see what's happening.
So if I'm on a board, what are the key governance questions I should be asking right now? Not the technical details, but the high-level mandate.
Okay, 3 things. First, do we have a documented event logging policy? Does it cover how long we keep logs, who can access them, and how they're reviewed? Second, have we formally defined who is responsible across IT, security, cloud teams? Who owns this? And third, this is the critical one, have we identified all the critical systems that need logging? Every single one.
And when management starts talking about the technical side, they use terms like centralization and time sync. Why is the architecture of logging so important?
Because the integrity of the logs is everything. If someone can tamper with them, they're worthless. That's why the architecture has to pull logs from everywhere, operating systems, applications, databases, and they have to be time synchronized. globally.
Like making sure everyone's watch is set to the exact same second.
Perfect. If they aren't, your investigation falls apart. And those logs need to be sent immediately to a centralized system with really tight access controls so they can't be changed.
Like concentration of data. I mean, that sounds like it needs significant resources, specialized tools.
It absolutely does. The scale of this, managing these controls, centralizing all that data securely, it requires top-tier expertise and often really strong vendor relationships.
And I guess that's where strategic resource allocation becomes critical. For finding those robust solutions and partners who can handle this, it's a good idea to start by exploring resources like www.cisomarketplace.com and the specialized support you can find at www.cisomarketplace.services. Okay, moving from visibility to, wow, internal decay, let's talk about legacy IT. This has been a budget item forever, but the guidance calls it out as a significant and enduring risk. Why is this still such a headache at the board level?
Because legacy systems, by their very nature, have weak or unsupported security. So when an incident happens, and remember, assume compromise, that legacy system just magnifies the impact. You're talking sister shutdowns, massive recovery costs, and just a huge loss of confidence.
The ideal solution is obviously to replace it.
Yeah.
But that can be a massive multi-year project. So when that's not possible right away, what's the board's duty?
Their duty is to manage the risk tolerance. Explicitly, they have to make sure management has documented all of the legacy IT, assigned a clear owner for each piece, and knows exactly how critical it is. If you can't replace it, you have to contain it.
So what are those non-negotiable compensating controls they need to see evidence of?
They need proof that if you can't patch it, you have other strict measures. Access must be severely restricted. Only who absolutely needs it. And all access to that legacy environment has to be logged and monitored relentlessly. Plus, your incident response plans need specific playbooks for a legacy compromise, and you have to test them. The board needs a clear, funded roadmap to retire every high-risk asset.
That focus on internal risk really sets us up for the next section, which is all about looking outward. We always say an organization is only as strong as its weakest link, and that link is often the supply chain.
Absolutely critical. And the risk goes both ways. You're exposed to your suppliers, but you also pose a risk to your customers if your security fails. Boards need end-to-end oversight here.
This sounds like it needs procurement, legal, and the CISO to be in constant contact. What's a foundational policy look like?
It starts with, a formal policy and clear ownership, but strategically, you have to categorize suppliers by how critical they are and assess their cyber posture before you sign a contract.
And what about the contracts themselves? What needs to be in there?
They have to be ironclad. Mandate specific security requirements, immediate breach notification, and compliance with national standards. For example, here, compliance with the ASD's Information Security Manual, the ISM, is just non-negotiable for critical entities.
So you're basically extending your internal standards to your partners. What about when a supplier needs, say, privileged access to your network? How do you manage that risk?
It's all about control. You implement really robust controls on that third-party access. It has to be limited only to what is absolutely necessary. That means network segmentation, putting them in a secure little sandbox, and mandatory multi-factor authentication. And then you watch them. You monitor and log everything they do. And your incident response plans have to include supply chain scenarios.
Managing these vast, multifaceted risks, from supply chains to, well, the kind of future shock stuff we're about to get into, it seems like it demands instant, clear visibility for the board.
That's where good governance tools are key. Boards need dashboards that tie security status directly to business risk. That's what resources like cyberboard.cisomarketplace.com are designed for, to give that centralized oversight.
Speaking of unprecedented changes, let's look way down the road at something that requires action now. The post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, transition. This is where it gets really interesting. For anyone who isn't a cryptographer, why is this an existential threat boards need to deal with today?
Because this is a classic governance time bomb. The threat is the eventual arrival of what they call cryptographically relevant quantum computers. Current encryption, the stuff securing your bank, your email, relies on math problems that are too hard for today's computers. Quantum computers will solve them in seconds.
So it's not a flaw, it's just a mathematical expiry date on all current security.
Precisely. It will render huge amounts of modern cryptography instantly insecure. The board needs to understand they have harvest now, decrypt later data, stuff an adversary can steal today, hold on to, and just wait to decrypt when the quantum computers arrive.
That sounds incredibly expensive and far off. Why should a board budget for this now when the threat doesn't fully exist yet?
Because the transition will take years, maybe 5 to 10 years, or even longer to get right, across every single system. If you wait until a quantum computer is on the horizon, it's too late. You'll have a catastrophic failure. Boards have to acknowledge this, figure out what data is most vulnerable, and establish a funded, multi-year plan right now.
What are the first concrete steps management needs to take and start reporting on?
The very first step is a crypto inventory. They have to document everywhere cryptography is used, every algorithm, every protocol. You have to know what you have. Second is vendor engagement. Boards need to demand their key vendors disclose their own PQC transition plans. If your vendor isn't ready, you can't be ready.
And once you have that information, you can start building the roadmap.
Yes. You monitor guidance from bodies like the AICD, and you establish a clear, staged plan to migrate to new quantum-resistant algorithms, and you have to test them rigorously in non-production environments first. This is all about building resilience for the next generation of data security. So if we pull it all together, the guidance for 2025 and 2026, the key takeaway is that the bar for governance has just been raised, sharply. It's moved way past simple checklists. Boards are now expected to have active, hands-on oversight over these really technical mandates, logging, legacy IT, supply chain risk, and future-proofing for things like quantum.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, especially if you're in a small organization, maybe not for profit? That doesn't feel like, a massive target.
It means this is universal. The guidance explicitly says even small to medium enterprises should use these same questions as a framework. If you can confidently answer these questions, then you're validating that your safety posture meets this very high emerging baseline.
That's powerful. And that emphasis on tracking regulatory developments around post-quantum cryptography, it really forces us to look beyond the immediate, which raises a final question for you to think about as you prepare your next strategic update. In a world where we know our current security technology has an expiry date, how far ahead, 5 years, 10, 20 must, our governance plans really look to ensure not just compliance, but true, enduring resilience? Remember, strategic insight and the right resources are out there to support this transition. You can visit cyberboard.cisomarketplace.com for those strategic governance tools and explore www.cisomarketplace.com and www.cisomarketplace.services for the expert resources you'll need. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive. We'll see you next time.